now Melbourne restaurants are trying to come out into country Victoria, that in a way is taking up a portion of what revenue we're trying to eke out of our market in a very minimal way that we're able to operate at the moment. Yeah, I feel quite strongly that is just not being kind at the moment, or living up to what we say have been trying to do so much in this time, is live local and support local.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are heading back to regional Victoria to find out how it's going. And the person we are talking to is Dianne Ray. Dianne owns the Shared Table, a very fresh restaurant in Buninyong, which is close to Ballarat. When I say fresh, I mean it hadn't opened for very long before a pandemic struck us. That is not an easy thing to go through. And Dianne, I am really, really looking forward to hearing how you're coping.
Thanks, Dani. It's been an interesting time. I don't think there's quite a word to describe. Interesting doesn't seem to come close, but yes, that's probably a near one. We're coping. It's been, I heard a saying the other day that after a while, even riding a roller coaster isn't fun, and I think that pretty much is how we've felt in dealing with all the different changes and how we have to adapt and rethink. So that's been an interesting time.
Yeah, well, I remember when we met, and I think it was December. It was at the Longhouse near Daylesford, and we were both at an event celebrating fermentation. And when I think back to the event, we were crowded around a kitchen bench. We were passing food around. We were, we had a nice long chat sitting around a kitchen table, with a bottle of wine or two going back and forth. It just seems so innocent in a way now to think about how convivial we were allowed to be, how social we could be. We must have been we must have been breathing on each other and mingling all kinds of juices, but it just seemed fine and very human and very warm and connected. And I really remember the passion that you spoke about, your very young business at the time, and also all the experience that you brought into it. Yeah, I mean, I really feel for you in being on this crazy roller coaster so soon in the journey of the Shared Table. So yeah, there's so much to talk about, but what I'd like to start with the now. And you've just reopened after being closed for our second lockdown. Can you talk about reopening and whether it's the beautiful picnic that people might imagine?
So the second reopening, because we did it the first time, and that was exciting. It was a little bit daunting because we were thinking about how do we do the COVID thing in our restaurant. We were very mindful of signage and having crosses on floors, but also at the same time we needed to create an ambience and make people feel welcome, and that they were still celebrating having to come out and enjoy an evening with whoever they sought to share company with. So, and this time around, we're a bit more ready for that. That was all in place, but this time we're only allowed 10 inside. And the first time we thought 20 was minimal in a restaurant that normally seats 60. But this time 10 seems, it's just these people dotted around your floor space. And in my restaurant, we have a very much a connection between the kitchen and the diner, which is something when we recently built the kitchen, we wanted that relationship between the kitchen and the diner to know that how we both interacted with the meal. And to see these few people dotted has been a bit sad, really. But they still come inside very excited, and you still got to be excited with them. So one thing I have found that they've walked in and they're going, "You must be so excited to be open again." And I'm sort of trying to be excited, but in the same hand, it's not, because it's actually harder than being closed and doing takeaway and delivery, because on that platform you have time frames, you have minimal staff that you can have on board. And you know that maybe by 12 o'clock on Saturday, everything's done and dusted because everyone's collected their finish at home meals for that weekend. Whereas now, I think last weekend it was a 12-hour day, and we seated in our 3 maximum services 32 people, and could have no more. And I probably turned away 20 to 30 people who could not sit outside because it was snowing. So yeah, it wasn't the best.
I mean, Victoria didn't really turn on ideal weather for the second weekend, I think it was, of, people allowed to be open. It was, yeah, it wasn't very conducive to al fresco, was it?
Not at all. And I did offer it to the people who phoned to get an indoor seat. And I said, more than welcome to sit outside. We have a fairly good veranda area. It's not like they're totally in the elements, but it's still cold. Here in Buninyong, most evenings at the moment, it's still down to 6 degrees, most often probably 4. And I think the total temperature last, was it Thursday or Friday, got to 3 degrees outside, and that was during the day. So the temperatures fluctuate madly, and mostly if their top temperature might be 16 or 15 at the moment, that's only usually for about 5 minutes before it
It
heads
turns the
south
corner and
again.
goes back down the hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. I mean, I'd like to feel that I'm an intrepid diner and I would just put on an extra jumper and some fingerless gloves and just seat myself out on that veranda. But to be honest, I mean, you might do it once, but you're not going to want to do it 3 times a week, are you? I don't know if any of us are so intrepid to support restaurants by dining in the snow. I mean,
No,
it's, yeah,
no.
it's a big ask. Now you mentioned the long day that you had to serve those 30 or so diners. What about financially? Like, was it on a par with the takeaway that you'd done, let's say, the weekend before?
No, not at all. Because we have an extra staff member to do front of house as well. We sometimes it'll just be I didn't qualify for JobKeeper being such a newbie, and I have a young fellow who wants an apprenticeship. He's just turned 18 and is really good in the kitchen. So usually it's just he and I doing service, and um, we sometimes get a front of house, so that's an extra staff member. So that adds to the costs. There, we're around longer. So, like I was saying before, usually we could do our
Mm.
takeout or delivery. We have it in set times, so that was it curbed the staffing costs. But having be there for lunch, dinner, it means that we're there for a lot longer and prepping as well, but we're serving. So it does create a lot more cost for staffing wise, that we have to be ready to do that. And
And
our takeaway has dropped off as well because we're open. So now our delivery and we call them pickups because they're finish at home meals, they've really dropped off because people expect to come out and dine again. So we've got none this week. So I'm still trying to work out why that is, that it's now so reduced, because we need that to
that's
prop us up.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? That you would think if people couldn't get a booking with you, I mean, they're not then saying, "Oh, fine, I'll just order some takeaway." What do you think they're doing instead?
Well, I think most restaurants have opened, even though it's 10 diners. Maybe before in the first lockdown, there was restaurants that didn't reopen, or the other thing it could be is, and I've been a bit perplexed about this, is that there is now Melbourne restaurants through a body is offering meals to Victoria and regional Victoria, coming out of Melbourne to offer meals that are finish at home, from great restaurants in Melbourne. And as much as I applaud that and think it's great, I just don't think that's a great time. So whether that's having an effect on us as well, I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I suppose Melbourne restaurants are looking at other ways that they can, increase their revenue, and there probably is demand in country Victoria. I suppose a lot of people in your part of the world would often come to Melbourne to dine, so I suppose there is that pent up demand. But at the same time, I can hear how, yeah, opening is not the magic pill for you. So
mm,
yeah, it's a tricky one to think about.
so
Because I mean, we don't normally think about metro Melbourne and regional being so sharply demarcated, but indeed there is, yeah, there is that ring of steel around the city at the moment. It's, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I remember, and I think you were one of the people who advertised and spoke out about a group called Maryvale coming from Sydney down to Melbourne in July in the first lockdown, and there was great discussions from various participants in Melbourne restaurant scene to say it's not the time for Maryvale to do Maryvale at home in Melbourne. So it was like, trying to move in a market that was pretty decimated and taking up a portion of what revenue's left for us. Also, I sort of feel it echoes that a little bit, that now Melbourne restaurants are trying to come out into country Victoria. That in a way is taking up a portion of what revenue we're trying to eke out of our market in a very minimal way that we're able to operate at the moment. And a lot of these businesses are family owned. They're the fabric of our communities. So I feel quite strongly that that is just not being kind at the moment, or living up to what we say have been trying to do so much in this time, is live local and support local. And yeah, it sits uncomfortably with me that that's what they're doing at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it from both sides. I suppose, in many ways, we're told that we're all Victorians. We're in it together. We're clicking for Vic. We're earlier on. We had our empty eskies that we were filling up. So it's
Mm,
yeah, in one way, I guess Victoria is seen as one, but there is yeah, of course. You can think of local in so many different ways, can't you? I mean, local, I guess it's Australia, it's Victoria, it's yeah, it's your postcode, it's your town. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
I guess
from
our
a
population here wouldn't necessarily be wanted. Our food is not necessarily seen to be integrated back to Melbourne, so it's not a two-way street. So that it's sort of like, it'd be easy if we were on even playing fields, and someone would say, "I'd love the shared tables meal down in Carlton," but they can't do that. So yeah, it's not
mm,
the same really,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
What? Well, tell me a bit more about the shared table and the meals that you do. What is at the heart and soul of your restaurant?
Um, Our restaurant is a space that we do what's called dine without decision, and we have a minimal menu so that we have minimal waste, and we basically cook to what we need. And I often have people in our community who drop off excess goods and bits and pieces that we then use in our menu, and we plan our menu around. We change it often, and a lot of people have really loved that. They've loved coming in, not having, sort of food envy of someone else that's got, they should have chosen that one. Um, I have, but yeah, we've had some wonderful people. I've had so many limes contributed and citrus this year. It's been, and just this afternoon I got a delivery of rainbow chard, so that'll be on our menu for a group that are coming in tonight. Um,
Oh, lovely.
so
What are you
yeah,
making for
we
them?
pardon.
What are you making for
What do
your
we?
group tonight?
The menu this week, we have, I've got smoked pork ribs that are done in a black caramel vinegar. We have our take on prawn toast. We're doing a black garlic chicken Kiev, and all organic veg that are cooked with miso butter, and finished off with some house pickled cabbage. And we're doing a twice cooked souffle with homegrown rhubarb. So yeah, that's
Oh,
what we're
it
doing.
sounds so good. If I could get that in Melbourne, I would. And what about the chard? Where's that gonna end up tonight?
The chard will end up in the mix of organic vegetables. We have a beautiful Spring Mount organic veg here, and we will mix it through with that, with the miso butter that gets, so it's just a lovely, and it's with edamame beans that'll go with the chicken Kiev, the black garlic, which is also local from over at Spring Creek near Creswick. So we try
Oh,
and
yeah.
use a lot of what's grown around here, and there is so much that's good and wholesome,
Yes.
and and community still. And that's when I built my restaurant. We kept it community. I had a Melbourne architect that helped with it, and I did the project management of it, so I could keep all our trades local, so that our money went back into our community. So I do have a real sense of community, and maybe that's why I'm sort of not all that happy with people upsetting community at the moment a little bit. From hospitality community probably is also.
Mm. Yeah. I know that one of the things that you wrote to me by email early in the pandemic, gosh, feels like a long time ago now, and you were already thinking about the other side and reopening. And one of the things that you were focused on was a greater understanding among the public about what it costs to run a restaurant and what it costs to get food on the table.
Mm.
Um, and whether indeed this was an opportunity to reset some of those expectations around what meals in restaurants should cost. Is that thinking that's carried you through the past months, and do you feel like this still is an opportunity to reset diner expectations in that regard?
Yeah, I've cooking has been my second career, so I've come into this as a fairly mature adult with many tastes and explorations of restaurants and so forth around the world. I used to be a nurse in my previous life, and I came into a mature aged apprenticeship and thought, wow, these guys work so hard for so little. What is this? And I was just dumbfounded that about and then I reflected on people who belong to wine and food groups and their expectation of what a chef could put up, and then they would haggle with them about the price and try and beat them down on the price of what it would cost, because they feel that, well, they didn't pay us that for a steak in the supermarket, and they didn't see
Mm.
what went behind the guys first acquiring great produce, then paying homage to that great produce and actually working with it, getting the best out of it, and providing that great hospitality and generosity to their clients. And that's how I saw it from coming from the other side. And it's been something I've always tried to educate people that I know utilize the hospitality a lot, and from a consumer and from now sitting on the side of being a chef, I have a lot of conversations with friends and people about, do you realize this is what goes on? So it would be great to have that as a broader based perception out there to the public, that of what actually goes on and how much it does cost people, and the margins that people operate on. It just doesn't bear belief sometimes, and now it might be a place to throw that open, especially when people walk in the door and say, aren't you excited to be open with 10 people? It's like, well, do you realize I'm merely handing you dollars to come into my restaurant? Because at the moment I'm just trying to keep its spirit alive, its word alive, and keep it's a form of promotion and advertising for me, because our name isn't even out there. No one knows we exist because we're so new. So that's how I've rationalised my costings at the moment. But it's not infinite either.
Mm. So how much is your menu at the moment?
It's a $65 menu
And
for
what do you reckon it
the
should
three
be?
courses.
Yeah, that
Um,
seems really cheap. So what do you think it should be for, you to be able to, I mean, let's perhaps not think about 10 diners, but when you're allowed to have a full restaurant, what do you think a reasonable price for your menu should be?
um, the reasonable price for the menu. I mean, I've tried to keep it price pointed based on ingredients at the moment. So our ingredients are fairly easy, accessible, and not expensive. But if I was to do expensive menus, then on an average, I imagine it would be at least an $80 food menu per person on the three courses, and that would be, yeah, I'd see that as being reasonable.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable to me. I mean, it sounds like you put up a generous amount of food. It's very, obviously very thoughtful, really expresses the area. Um, so yeah, would it be scary to put your prices up to that point where you think it's reasonable?
Um, Being so new, and I am very new at this as well, so I put my hand up very much on that. I would find it scary at the moment because it's so new. We're also not filling up at the moment because people are still very tentative about coming out. So last week on our
Mm,
first night, we had 10 in the first sitting, and then we had 2 people come in the second sitting. So I would be frightened to put it up a bit, and I don't know how to quite deal with that, but it would be once we're better known and known for what we do, that then that would come.
yeah. It's so tricky. Like, it's so hard to be a leader in that space of putting up prices. I know that restaurateurs that I speak to, and cafe owners perhaps even more so, talk about how price sensitive customers are, and that
Mm.
people will go down the street if your coffee goes up 20 cents. So it's just it's such a tricky balance because you don't want to be working for nothing either. And yeah, I suppose you want to have that cash flow to be able to put on premium ingredients, that if that's just what you feel like doing, or if that's what's amazing at the moment, and yeah, that you want to give your customers that experience, but it inevitably costs a little bit more.
And we're also in a very small community here. Buninyong is barely 5,000 people thereabouts. Don't I may have got that wrong, but we're just on the outskirts of Ballarat. We're probably a 10 to 15 minute drive from Ballarat, and it's because there's a lot of people in Ballarat who still don't know we exist. So there's not that. We're still operating very much within a small community, and slowly but surely, it's getting a wider consumer base, which is good. But I think the pandemic's
Mm,
also been difficult in getting that. But it's in saying that we've also had some great um, advertising and things from within the Ballarat Council. They've really tried to start advertising for different businesses and putting their name out there so that customers know you exist. So
mm.
yeah, that has been good, but I'm finding with whether people come in or not, it's still very early days and they're still very tentative. But there's
Yeah. Um,
from sorry.
I'd love to talk about your apprenticeship and doing becoming a chef as a second career, and what it was like being a woman as an apprentice in that period. Like, did you find it hard, and do you think there was anything about being a woman that made it particularly challenging?
I entered my apprenticeship in my early 40s, and I went to Melbourne. I did my apprenticeship with a fellow by the name of Peter Ford, who is a caterer, and he agreed to take me on as a part time because I had 4 young children at the time. And we, he was very good. I never, the, yeah, he was very tolerant to the point that it was a very complicated apprenticeship in that I developed breast cancer 8 months into my first year apprenticeship, and had to do surgery and chemotherapy, etc., for the next 13 months or so. Of
Wow.
which he was just such a brilliant fellow in supporting. Knew I had to. All I wanted to do was feel normal and go back to work, and he knew in between my chemotherapy that I would come to work and work when I could, and I was probably more hindrance than a help, but he was very tolerant of that, and it kept me in touch with my community and my want to keep doing my course and have my hands in food, which was very therapeutic. Um, I finished my apprenticeship. I also found I was at William Angliss at the time, and they were all very understanding there. And I remember there was a lady. I really wanted to get my exams out of the road, so my first year exams would be finished, and then when I came back, I could recommence. I knew I'd finished my first year of theory and everything, but to do that, I had to do a practical cooking lesson. And I only had one arm that I could use because my other one wasn't operational at the time post surgery. And I
Wow.
had a helper. I had a helper in the kitchen to help me fill pots and clean and to help stir if I needed to whisk, if I was making a roux or something like that. And it was, I remember it was Elizabeth Chong's daughter. I can't remember her first name, but she was brilliant and helped me out a lot. So I could do that and say, yes, I've done that. And then I could proceed with my chemotherapy and focus on that. And yeah, it was, so that part of it, I had a very, and I don't think being a woman came into it then. It was more about,
Yeah, that yeah.
about going through the journey and making sure you, not just your physical health counted, but your mental health counted. And that gave me a lot of normality, which is desperately you seek that at that time. Um, I then left. I left after I finished my apprenticeship. I went to another restaurant, which was brilliant, but it was a very boysy kitchen. And I'm probably a tomboy at heart, so I didn't find it too confronting. There were some women who only lasted 2 weeks there, but generally I loved it. So I never had an issue other than my age, probably. A lot of people were hanging on me for being old, but no, they were good. No, they were good. Just the usual kitchen banter, which is I find it entertaining, and I love to contribute to it as well. So I didn't,
Great.
yeah. I think for myself, because I was older, and if there was anything that was directed at me being a woman, it wasn't. I didn't see it as. I didn't feel it was a problem because of my age. And a lot of them were a lot younger, so I never got any of those issues. So no, but they were good. They were good fellas. Yeah. So no,
Mm.
but then
Wow.
you do have to prove yourself a lot more, though. I did find, like, you were very much relegated to desserts and salads, and I came to understand that it's very much like the barbecue at home. So the boys do the barbecue, and the girls get thrown on the desserts and salads and sandwiches. And if you want to muscle in on the barbecue, you have to really prove yourself.
And so you made it your business to prove yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a dessert girl, and they were quite surprised by that because I think a lot of girls do gravitate towards desserts, and it's a terrific part of being a chef. And I take my hat off to anyone who can do desserts, but I loved playing around with savoury and flavours and robust things and working out how to make connections between different stuff on in within a lot more parameters than just desserts. And yeah, so I had to work pretty hard.
And was it that pure love of food that took you away from being a nurse to being a chef?
Yeah, I always, even being a nurse, I'd often take my little granny trolley down to Vic Market on little explorations and find weird, wonderful ingredients that I didn't understand and wanted to play with and use them. And then I sort of gravitated towards having dinner parties at home for 20 people sometimes, so I could have an excuse to cook and do things. Yeah, I've always loved it, and I helped set up a farmers market here in Buninyong way back in early days, and also was part of Slow Food before I was a chef. So yeah, I've always had a had a vibrancy towards the food and its journey and working with flavors. I see it like a jigsaw puzzle where you put pieces together to find the whole bit, which is flavor, texture, and how it looks.
Mm. Yum. I feel like as you're talking, you're putting a big, comforting, colorful bowl of something in front of me. I can just really sense your love of food and flavor. Di, we've heard quite a bit about nurses through the pandemic. You know, they've been on the front line. We've honoured them, but they've also, so many of them have worked so hard and in such difficult circumstances. How do you feel about that? Like, is there part of you that wishes you were part of that nursing effort at the time, or are you just glad that you're well out of it?
No, not at all. I actually, when the pandemic first started and we were closed our restaurant and all the rest of it, I actually went online and and spoke to a few old mates and thought I could actually re-enter and help out in some form, not as a nurse as such because I'm not registered still, but I still have a good knowledge base because I worked and taught nursing. I was a clinical nurse specialist in the emergency department, and I felt that I still had and still have skills that would be relevant to sorting or taking bloods or on basic, just the basic things to do with stuff. But these guys are, and that's, you have to be passionate to work there as well. You have to have a dedication towards what you do. It is above and beyond, and it's sort of like what chefs do. I see a real sort of kindred thing there. A lot of chefs are very passionate about what they do and the hours they put in and the focus they do, and it's the same in the medical field. I have two kids that are in the medical field and have both been working in Melbourne hospitals during this time, in COVID wards and in emergency departments. So
Wow.
yeah, they've yeah. So I feel for them, and I look at them every day, and I'm very proud to see and hear what they've done, and that they continue to do. And I mean, we're pretty fortunate here. It's when I look overseas and see the enormity of what those guys must be facing every day for months and months on end, the grind that they must be doing. Yeah, I can't even express it. It would be phenomenal. The first couple of days you'd probably be, yeah, okay, but months later it must get pretty overwhelming.
And are your kids doing okay?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. Yeah, they're staying well, and one of my son, he's doing psychiatry, and he's having some tough days because he's not a, he's deals with a lot of very difficult cases at the moment, which is on the uprising within Melbourne. And my daughter,
Mm,
she's been in the COVID wards doing some work, and now she's just finished in the emergency department in her rotation. But they sound
wow.
bright. They're good. Yeah.
Great. That's good. Di, I'd love you to finish by uh, talking about career change and perhaps just sharing some of your experience and some advice if you have any. I know that a lot of people that are in hospitality have used this period, or it's been put in front of them to really ask themselves, is this what I want to do? Is there a change that I want to make, whether it's within hospitality, and some people might be even considering careers outside. What can you tell us about career change and about following a dream in the way that you have?
I think you just need to be ready to do it. It's a fairly big jump. For me, and financially, it was needed to be considered in that my personal income would drop a great deal. Going, if I was to pursue nursing, it was a much better income stream than if I was pursuing to be a chef, especially being an apprentice for 3 years. In my case, for 7. um,
Mm,
so there's lots of things to consider, and I suppose it just depends on your time and place. Whether you've got children or a supportive partner, all those things of which I had ability to take on that apprenticeship because my employer agreed to it being part time, to take into account the fact that I still had to rear four children. And my partner was very supportive, as always has been. um, yeah, and finding the right employer to let you do your journey into something new is also very important. Um, it's a tricky one because a lot of things have to line up. I would probably, nursing wasn't an option for me at the time, and I sort of explored helping out, doing some kitchen work at the beginnings, and really loved it, and thought, well, I might as well try. Maybe I can do an apprenticeship and make it count while I'm working here, and my employer agreed to take me on a part-time basis. So that's then I could actually do what I really wanted to do. It was terrific.
mm. So, yeah,
But
you
yeah,
really explored and exploring each step took you further down the path to where you are now.
Yeah, it was. I just loved fitting into the kitchen community, the way it evolves with the way you prepare food, and it was just another fresh way of looking at stuff. And I dabbled in food, I realized, but this was actually I could actually see how it all came together, and how you could make things differently or change it up a little bit, or it was just really kooky. And I just could grab it both hands and keep going. It was fun, and it was hard, very hard, but it was worth it, if that makes sense. A
Absolutely.
lot of
And I mean,
a lot of people think I'm mad anyway, but that's cool. They're just but no.
well, it is certainly a long and circuitous path that has taken you to where you are now, and of course, none of us had predicted the extreme challenges of the past 7 months. I really wish you many sunny days. I wish you a full dining room. I wish you supportive customers who reckon your menu's just a little bit too cheap. And I wish a very bright future for the shared table. Di, thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear what you've got to say. Thank you.
And thank you, Dani, for being such a great champion of many.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.